January 23rd and June 9th, 2021. Notices were sent to the Asbury Park Press, Two River Times, and the Independent, as well as posted on the bulletin board in the main office and on access to the town hall door, filed in the clerk's office and posted on the township's website. This meeting is being conducted on a remote electronic basis using Zoom with live streaming on Facebook and YouTube and will be archived on the township YouTube and Facebook pages. As such, recordings of public meetings are public records subject to the Open Public Records Act. There will be an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions or provide comments once the meeting is open to the public. At that time, if any member of the public wishes to ask questions or provide comments, please use the raise your hand feature on the bottom or tap the screen, and you will be invited into the meeting by the chairperson one at a time. You will need to have audio and video capability, and you will be sworn in and asked to provide your name and address for the record. You may also dial 9 if accessing this meeting by telephone. Can we please stand for a moment for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence to honor our military who've been wounded or killed in action, as well as our first responders who keep us safe every day. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Okay, I saw Greg on the listing, but I don't see him anymore. And Joyce, can we let Joyce in?
I'm in. Thank you, Bonnie.
And Greg, you're in? Is Joyce in? And Joyce, okay. Okay, Mr. Ackerson?
Here.
Mayor Bontempo?
Here.
Ms. Damaso?
Here.
Mr. Foster? Mr. Foster?
He's here. He might be muted. I saw him.
Mr. Castaning?
Here.
Mr. King? Mr. Nicholas?
Mr. King is here also. He's still on mute.
Okay. Ms. Plustas?
Here.
Mr. Santana?
Here.
Mr. Emma?
Here.
Mr. Daly? Would you like to seat Mr. Emma for Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. The first item on our agenda is the continued public hearing, Barclay Square at Holmdel. It's a preliminary and final major site plan, number 2020-1. Proposed 60-unit multifamily apartment building associated site improvements on Palmer Avenue, Block 52, lots 17 and 18. The property consists of 6.74 acres of undeveloped land in the AHMF Affordable Housing Multifamily Zone. 48 of the proposed apartment units will be market rate units, while 12 of the units will be affordable units. The 60 apartment units will be contained in one building with 116 parking spaces proposed. Mr. Zimmerman, I had to find you on the screen. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening. Neil Zimmerman from the law firm of Waters McPherson McNeil in Secaucus, New Jersey, representing the applicant Barclay Square at Holmdel. I have one witness tonight who should be very, very brief. It is the architect, Victor Barr, who will testify as to revised architectural plans that we have filed, which show a larger elevator cab, and also that cab fits within the elevator shaft. So without further ado, I'd like to call Mr. Barr.
He's in. He was in.
He was in.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in,
Barr.
unmuted.
Okay. Mr. Barr, you're still under oath from the first time you were sworn in.
Yes. Can I share my screen, or can I get the,
Sure. Carrie.
Should be good to go now.
all right, can everyone see this document I have up?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Try now, Mr. Barr.
How about now?
No, I think you have to hit share contact top of your screen.
Let me see, top of my
Or maybe it's on the
screen.
bottom. Mine's on the top. Yours might be on the bottom.
I'm not seeing it.
Do you have, there's a toolbar with like the, where you would mute and, start your video or stop your video? Where do you have where's the mute function? It's right there. It's with that.
Should be on the bottom. There's a little green icon, share screen. If you-
Vic,
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I don't see it.
Vic, does the elevator fit?
Yes.
Okay. Did we hear anything from the construction office?
Who's asking the questions?
Kim Pizzo.
Mr. Pizzo, if you wouldn't mind, either the attorney can ask the questions.
I
the
apologize.
board members. Thank you so much.
It's going a long time. All right.
All right, how about now?
There you go.
There you go.
All right, so everybody sees that?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so the 2018 International Building Code, the New Jersey edition, states that any building that's 4 stories or more must have at least one elevator that accommodates a 24 by 48 inch stretcher. Our original plan had what you call a 35-pound elevator, and it had a platform size of 7 foot by 6'3". After hearing some comments from the planning board that, okay, that possibly can't we make this a little bit bigger so there's a little bit more breathing room within the elevator, we decided to change the elevator to what is known as a 4,000-pound elevator. And as you can see, this has a platform size of 8 foot by 6'3", which is 12 inches bigger than the original 35-pound elevator. So when we go to the plan, here is on the first level, here is the new 4,000-pound elevator in the lobby area, shown off the lobby area. And here it is on the upper floor in the lobby area on floors 2, 3, and 4. And that's the mechanical room that happens to just be on the second floor. The elevator has from that previous plan that I just showed, the hoistway is 9'4" by 6'11", which we have. The platform size, like I stated, is 8 foot by 6'3", and the minimum cab clearance is 7'8" by 5'5". So obviously the 4,000-pound elevator meets the requirement of the 2018 International Code, and does fit in the allocated space within the building.
That's all I have of Mr. Barr.
On mute, Chairwoman.
Brina, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Carrie, can you put Brian Forster back in, please? He got disconnected. Thank you. Mr. Barr, when you say, so the cab itself is 96 inches now in 96 inches by 75 inches.
The platform
When you say
size,
when you say platform, you mean the inside floor? Like what is platform?
the platform is the inside,
Okay,
right? But the minimum clear cab size is less than the platform size. And in the 4,000-pound elevator, it's 5'5" by 7'8", which is shown here, which is the 5'5" and the 7'8".
So it's reduced. So then the size is reduced.
Joyce, you're not muted if unless you're-
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay.
I'm talking to myself while
I know,
I'm
yeah, I know, me
speaking.
too. So. So I'm trying to get what the interior is, like that interior spot from wall
Is-
to wall, where you're gonna be standing, the floor space that you're gonna be standing on is 7 foot 8 inches?
By 5'5".
All right, still doesn't fit it's not 84 inches, but that's,
All right, now, this has not been presented as an exhibit, but this is the way, there's the 5'5", here's
okay,
the 7'8", and this is how the stretcher works. It goes in and it goes on an angle. So there's there's additional space here, there's additional space here, and the stretcher ends up being right there.
okay. I know how a stretcher works. Thank you. So we
Can
just
we,
wanted-
can we introduce as an exhibit? If that wasn't marked as an exhibit, we should use that.
Yes, I mean,
I don't know, Bonnie, do you know what number we're up to by any chance?
Best off just to put A1 with today's date,
Okay,
which is 6/15/21.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Barr?
Chairwoman, I do.
Go ahead.
Okay. If I can, Mr. Barr, if you could please, if you could put that up, that'd be great. If you could enlarge the screen, that'd be even better. Great. Thank
where do you want me to zero in on?
Zero in on the elevator. If you could bring it to
Here?
the center. Yep. No, not that, not the layout. I'm sorry, the layout. Yep. Okay, so thank you for this, Mr. Barr. I have just a few questions. You have the circle around this elevator. What does that mean as in relation to that parking spot within that circle? Is that usable or not usable?
Well, the circle was just to define the C detail A1, which is right here.
Okay,
And the circle is nothing more than
okay,
look over here for a blow up of detail 1A1.
yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you. So if you don't mind, can I share my screen?
Sure, I
yeah.
guess. Tell me what I have to do.
You have to
I
stop
have to
sharing.
I have to stop sharing?
Right.
Okay,
I'm doing this so that it's faster and convenient. So let me share my screen. So I'm basically showing the same screen that you did. Let me just enlarge this. Can everybody see the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Mr. Barr, first question, could you show us where the disabled parking spots are in this layout?
they're probably shown on the site plan.
Okay, so let me bring the site plan up. Let's see. That's not it. Okay, so I have the site plan here. Can you see the site plan?
Yeah, there they are right there.
Okay, so if you look at the site plan, you can see there are 4 handicap parking spots,
Yes,
and each pair of handicap parking spots occupy 3 of the regular. You see that? It's the same
Okay.
width as the 3 of the regular. Now, if I go to your if I go to your new plan, I don't have a 3 spot here. So if I assume these 3 and these 3 are handicap parking spots, I get 51 spots as opposed to regular spots, as opposed to 53 in your regular site plan.
Madam Chairman, could I ask that any questions along these lines be directed to the civil engineer who's available to testify? Mr. Barr was here tonight to testify about the cab, and the engineer who prepared the site plan, which allows for the ambulance, would be the better person to answer these questions.
Thank you, yes. Is, let's see. Lou, are you on?
He should be.
Is he in?
I thought he was.
Hold on, let me see. I don't see him. Oh, yeah, Lou Zugner, yeah, I see you. You're there. You unmute yourself and be heard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was observing, but not able to speak.
Okay.
Lou, before you testify, could I just ask the committeeman, what is the date of the plan that he has up on the screen? Want to make sure we have the latest version.
So the plan that I first showed has June 1st. You can see the date, June 1st, 2020.
Yeah, I'm talking about the site plan.
Okay, the site plan, let's see. I don't know if you can read any date on this, but I'll expand it further. This is from, I think, February, if I remember right. It's the February site plan.
On the right side, Prakash, you have to go to the right side. It's sideways.
Okay.
Keep going. It's behind it.
I can't see it.
It's behind our pictures.
Oh, yeah, it's behind our pictures, exactly. Let's
We
see.
just take it off.
Let me rotate it, so maybe that way you can see it.
Well, maybe Mr. Zugner will be able to tell just by looking at the plan. There were
There it is.
revised
There you
plans.
go.
that were-
2/18/21.
11/4/2020.
2/18/21. Or, yeah,
Yeah.
2/18.
11, that's when they signed them, but 11/4/2020.
Madam Chairman, could I ask that maybe Mr. Zugner could bring up the latest plans? Because there was something that was revised to address that issue in a later plan.
Thank you, Carrie. Okay, Mr. Zugner, you're going to be.
So when we were looking at the dates, November was the original plan date when this was first submitted, and there were a series of revisions. This most current plan set is now 5/7/21. And what I believe the councilman was looking at in this area here, the architect's latest plans, I know he was submitting showing structurally how he was creating space for the elevator. His plans, and he could talk to this as well, they're not final construction documents at this point, but what he and I had spoken about and seen in this layout with this column alignment and these handicap spaces, there's plenty of room in here to modify this lobby and accommodate the larger elevator. So the space is certainly there. If there's an inconsistency in what he's showing in the garage, that's because he's not intending to show the garage. That's our plan. So
Mr. Zugner, this, what you're showing us now is the same thing minus, so if you just, so what Mr. Barr showed us is just this half moon kind of thing, and then he just filled in some lines to the left. Would that be a correct statement? Where
make this elevator space larger, and you can see that there's space to make that larger.
Right, okay.
Not infringing on the parking.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Chairwoman, I have that's an important point I want to clarify. In the plan that Mr. Barr showed, if you look over into the, on the top here, where there are parking spots, they had actually shown a redesign of this entire parking area. And I want to make sure that is not the final plan, and this one that Mr. Ziegler is showing is the final plan, because there are two problems with that. First of all, number of parking spots have gone down for the regular spots have gone down from 53 to 51. And the second problem is that the handicap spots are not right next to the elevator, or cannot be next to the elevator, because they need, each pair needs about 3 spots, and the revised plan can accommodate handicap spots right next to the elevator. So.
Prakash, they're showing the this is the plan. The
No,
only
this
thing
is-
that he. this-
No, I'm
Prakash,
sorry, Serena, hold on one second. Let me pull my screen up. I just want to make sure. I want to confirm this, because that's not the way it's shown. Just give me a second.
Again,
Let me,
Sure, you can bring it up, but again, because I know you're new to the whole program here. What Mr. Barr was showing was, so ignore the traffic, the parking spaces. That's just for show. That's not the plan. Only part of his plan, and Mr. Zugner, correct me if I'm wrong, is where the elevator is. That's the only part that he's showing you. The rest of it doesn't count. It's only for the elevator and what's in the elevator. For the parking, it would be what Mr. Zugner just showed you. Is that correct, Mr. Zugner?
That's correct. Our plan is representing the parking. There's space to enlarge that elevator. Mr. Barr will design the building, and he's created the footprint of the building, which at this first level is just this lobby area dropping down. There is space for all 4 handicap spaces and the correct number of parking spaces.
okay, great. Thank you, because that's confusing. If you have a revised version of the diagram, as I said, I'd like to read everything and compare.
Mhm.
And if there's no information on it, then obviously it's a little misleading. That's all. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, anyone else
Serena?
have? any-
Yes, I do.
Go ahead,
So,
Joyce.
okay, I guess this is for Mr. Barr. Mr. Barr, when it's a medical emergency, time is always of the essence. And the new interior space and the new dimensions of the platform, will it now accommodate comfortably the stretcher, how many EMTs and the equipment they need? Will it be awkward, and will they lose time trying to position? That's all I want to know.
Well, I don't know how many EMTs it will accommodate and what kind of equipment it will accommodate. What I do know is that the original elevator that we specified, which was the 3,500-pound elevator, met the requirement of the 2018 IBC code, which would accommodate the 24 by 84 inch stretcher. This elevator with the 4,000-pound elevator is larger than that elevator. So it'll accommodate obviously more than what the original elevator would accommodate. Now, like I said, I don't know how many EMTs and what kind of emergency equipment it can accommodate, but I do know that it's beyond the requirement of accommodating a 24 by 84 inch stretcher. I'm sure that's not what you wanted to hear, but
I think the question is, can EMT staff get in the elevator with somebody on a stretcher and equipment? Yes or no?
I believe yes, because if the code says that the elevator has to accommodate that size of the stretcher, and that smaller elevator accommodated it, then I have to assume that whoever wrote the code understands the equipment and the size that the elevator has to be in order to get a person, in an emergency out of the building.
I mean, I guess, Mr. Zimmerman, you can decide how you want to answer that question, but the question is, and the reason that we're here today is, can the elevator accommodate a stretcher with somebody in it out flat with equipment and people? That's the whole reason we're here today. So I'm not understanding why he can't answer the question. I don't get it.
Ms. Beam, this is really not a site plan issue. This is a construction code issue.
Well, it's a
This is
health and safety issue. In fairness, this is a health and safety issue that the representatives of the board brought up. And we're here tonight to understand whether or not it's going to work. And your witness needs to answer the question.
There
Yes
are
or
plenty
no?
of, there are plenty of health and safety issues within the building itself that are covered by construction codes that planning boards don't review. For example, there's a lot of electrical equipment, electrical
Mr.
systems.
Zimmerman, I would not start bringing up examples because you might give somebody an idea. So this is something that we brought up and you decided to entertain, and only now are saying that it's under construction, or you said it last week, but so.
I said it in my letter when I
Right, you said
indicated
it-
that we bring Mr. Barr back, that this
Right.
was really a construction code issue. But since the board was insistent, we were going to increase the size of the cab and we would have Mr. Barr testify as an
Right.
accommodation.
And so it's a simple, Mr. Barr showed us a diagram that I believe allows him to answer Mrs. Plousas's question. He already testified somewhat to it, that the stretcher would go in and there's room for people to stand on either side of the stretcher. So
Yep.
I don't understand why he doesn't want to answer the question. He's giving me IBC code. And by the way, I looked up the IBC code and that was incorrect. It does not say it can go in on a diagonal. It actually says it has to go in horizontally. So I read all the IBC code. Prakash is not the only person who reads. So, it's a simple yes and no question. In his opinion, would it be able to accommodate a stretcher and the 2 EMTs that need to be, or 2 first aid people that need to be with the person when they go down? Now, he showed us a diagram. Does he believe that or is he saying that diagram that he drew is incorrect?
No, my response to that is it does meet the requirement of getting emergency out of that building according to the code. So since it meets the code, my answer is yes, it will accommodate whatever has to be accommodated to get those people out of the building.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Mr. Emmer, you had a question?
Yes, I was muted, sorry. The new exhibit that was presented tonight about the stretcher going in diagonally, that's a new exhibit and it wasn't presented the first time. So my question is, Mr. Barr, I guess it's for Mr. Barr, how many more inches does that new diagram or the new elevator give us versus the old elevator? How many more inches are we gaining from the previous plan?
12 inches in depth. And
But that doesn't really, I mean, you're going in diagonal with the stretcher and there was a reason you presented that new diagram this time. So the question is, why wasn't that diagram presented last time? And if, I mean, obviously it's bigger. We see the dimensions, but from a diagonal going into the elevator door, how many more inches does that allow versus the original one?
well, the difference between the original one and what's proposed tonight is the 12 inches in depth. And the reason that original diagram wasn't presented before was because the 35-pound elevator that was previously specified met the requirement of the code. And, since it met the requirement of the code, I didn't feel that it was necessary to present any supporting data beyond the fact that, yes, this is certified that it met the requirement of the code. But to answer your question, the difference between the 35-pound elevator and the 4,000-pound elevator is a foot, 12 inches in the depth of the platform.
Thank you. Serena, do you think as a first responder, do you think that's enough room for a stretcher and 2 EMTs?
It appears to be. When I looked at it, when I did I thought it was going off the 96, so that seemed to be, but even in this diagram that he gave us, it appears to be enough space. If somebody has to lay flat, for us to get in and out.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions? I'll take questions from the audience, but it has to be only on the testimony given, which is the elevator. So if you have questions about the elevator, you may raise your hand at this time and you can ask a question or make a comment about the elevator, because all other comment and questioning was closed previously? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public portion. And allow, Mr. Malenik, I'm sorry, did you have questions about the elevator?
No questions, but the pronunciation has gotten great.
I practiced it all week long. Okay, so Marty, I don't know the, what would be the correct procedure here for them to who would close first, or who would make a closing presentation first?
I would let Mr. Melnick go first if he wants, and then the applicant should conclude.
Okay, thank you.
That is fine with me, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't expect to take too much of the board's time. This is now, I believe, the 5th hearing on this matter, and much has been said on it. I think I just want to start off first by making sure that there's clarity on the intentions of my client, which is Palmer Square Condominium Association. As I indicated at a prior meeting, I'll reiterate now, there is no objection whatsoever to the use being proposed on the site, including the affordable housing. Palmer Square itself has over 20% affordable units. Many of the board members, which control the association, are owners of affordable units. And I'll get into a little bit the history of our involvement on this site, but I can say that early on, even the negotiations, the association made clear that it was in favor of a smaller, more appropriate, in their opinion, and suitable project, even if it was 100% affordable. So I think it's important to set that out first. Concerns we have are the same concerns that they had during the last time this was before a board in this township, almost 5 or 6 years ago. They're over safety and welfare for the citizens that live in Palmer Square and around the property. They're not new concerns, and many members of this board will remember when they came around the first time. Now, we've been making them with this respective application in court when it was involved as an intervening party in the township's affordable housing declaratory judgment action. We were involved in the early discussions and negotiations with the court, and at that time we were told, we'll take these issues up at the fairness hearing. Then we had the fairness hearing, and at the fairness hearing, we were told, we'll take these issues up at the planning board. So now we're here at the planning board and pleading our case that the proposed use, the proposed density, the proposed development on this site is not suitable and will cause adverse impacts and adverse effects on our client's property and cause safety issues that not only they perceive, but the board perceived itself 6 years ago when it denied the application. So what I expect you're going to hear from Mr. Zimmerman is that the application is as of right. It comes before you without any variances, and you have an obligation to rubber stamp it through. But there's a reason that the law does not allow for your professionals to simply check off that all the submission documents of an application were adhered to and followed and rubber stamp approvals. There's a reason that the law requires that citizens such as yourself sit as volunteers and hear these applications and ask those questions and determine that the application before it meets all the requirements. And those requirements are not without some level of discretion. Your planner tonight, just minutes ago, indicated that the questioning tonight, and the reason we were here tonight, was because of a health and safety issue. These are appropriate questions that were posed by the board at each of the hearings, each of the meetings during this hearing, and they're issues that we've been talking about for years now. Let's talk about the application that happened several years ago that was denied. There's no dispute that that application was different legally from the application before you because of the amount of variances that were sought years ago. And there are no variances tonight because of the change in zoning. But what's not different is the actual proposed project. It's still the same Costco-sized building that's before you. And in the resolution memorializing the board's decision then, not only did it make its conclusions with respect to the variance, but you made various findings of fact, which are still applicable today. These are findings of fact, not related to the variance, but related to the condition of the property. I'm going to read a few of them, just as I did when I questioned Mr. Zugner on these, I think it was 3 hearings ago now. First finding of fact the board found, The firsthand knowledge of the board members of numerous flooding events on Palmer Avenue and the resulting serious safety concerns on both residents gaining access, egress, as well as for emergency vehicles gaining access to the site resulting therefrom. Second finding of fact, the uncontradicted testimony of the various witnesses of the numerous flooding events on Palmer Avenue of at least 5 to 8 times per year, and the serious safety concerns of both residents gaining access, egress, as well as emergency vehicles gaining access to the site resulting therefrom. And the last one I'll reference, the third one, the effects downstream and on the adjoining properties from flooding and whether additional testing and or redesigns can be implemented to reduce downstream flooding. These issues, these findings of fact are not different now than they were then. The change in zoning didn't change Mother Nature from 5 years ago then to now. Those are still the findings of fact of that board, and the applicant has not produced any facts which change that. In fact, I questioned Mr. Zugner on what was different with respect specifically to the board's finding of fact then that there was a safety concern with the access and the egress of the project. You have one way in and you have one way out, and the board was concerned about that. And right now before you is an application, there's one way out, one way in. Mr. Zugner confirmed through cross-examination that there was no difference to that. Your ordinance with which the purpose of the hearing is to confirm that this application complies with is riddled with examples of providing this board the right to determine whether or not an application is providing an adverse effect to other properties. Your ordinance defines even what adverse effect is. And in part, it says development designs or existing features on a developer's property or nearby property, creating, imposing, aggravating, or leading to impractical, unsafe, unsatisfactory, or non-complying conditions. Your planner just moments ago again reiterated that this board has the right to determine health and safety issues. You made findings of fact 5 years ago about this property that were related to health and safety, and this application the applicant has proposed an application that is no different from what this board made findings of fact all those years ago. Two other issues. Last hearing, Mr. Murphy testified and provided conclusions that the applicant, the basin that is being proposed, was relying on our property, on Palmer Square's property, to satisfy the stormwater regulatory requirement that the top of berm be a foot above the water level. It is not. No plans have been submitted since the last hearing which have corrected that. Right now, as it sits, according to Mr. Murphy and my reading of the regulations, the plans submitted before the board do not contain all of the required basin requirements on the property. An approval of this application would require Palmer Square property. That's an adverse effect. You heard about little things too, which create adverse effect. You heard about revisions to the plan, which allowed access to maintain the basin through a door in the garage, only accessible through the cooperation of residents moving their cars, since there are vehicles right in front of it. Imagine a scenario in which that basin is not maintained either by this applicant or a successor, and the township needs to come in and can only access maintenance, even on an emergency basis to that basin through the coordination of getting somebody to move their vehicle. These conditions are created because the window, the envelope on this site are such, with conservation easements, wetlands and such, that the only way they can get the density that they're proposing is to squeeze everything in like this, to rely on Palmer Square property for the top of basin and access doors like that. For these reasons, we contend there's still a lot of work that the applicant has to do to render this a complying application, to render it free from health and safety hazards to neighboring properties and adverse effects to neighboring properties. Applicant has been given many opportunities to make those changes, but they haven't. So it is our hope and wish that the board will recognize that and deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zimmerman?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'd like to start off by thanking the board for your time and attention. As Mr. Malenik has said, this is our 5th hearing on this application. Barclay Square is seeking preliminary and final site plan for 60 units. 12 of them will be affordable and 48 market rate. As Mr. Malenik says, no variances are required. We have responded to all of the comments of your professionals, either in the plans or in conditions which we've agreed to in the course of the hearing. The property is identified as an affordable housing site in the settlement with the Fair Share Housing Center and also in the township's housing plan. There was a fairness hearing conducted in Superior Court, Monmouth County. In fact, there were 2 hearings. Both times, Judge Grasso Jones approved the site for inclusion in the township fair share plan. The court found the site to be approvable, available, developable, and suitable, which is the four-pronged test for inclusion of a site in a fair share plan. Palmer Square objected through counsel, Mr. Malenik, to the inclusion of the site in the township plan. The court rejected his arguments. Based in part on that finding, the court approved the settlement with Fair Share Housing Center. And the court entered a final 3rd round judgment of compliance and repose. And Mr. Flagler, I'm sure, can explain much better than me what that means, but essentially that judgment means that the town has protection against builder remedy lawsuits. But that judgment also requires the township to approve the site, or God forbid, to start the process all over with a substitute site. Following the judgment of the court, the township committee amended their zoning ordinance to create the AHMF, Affordable Housing Multifamily Zone, for this property. These zoning limits were drafted to allow the application which is before you. This is not unusual at all. That's what happens in Mount Laurel cases. The ordinances are drafted to facilitate the affordable housing which is called for in the town's own housing plan. The board's role in this hearing is to determine compliance with the design and zoning standards and design standards in the zoning ordinance and the site plan review ordinance and the RSIS. We would submit to you that Barclay has shown through its proofs, its reports, and testimony that we have complied with all of those requirements. And so we respectfully ask that the board grant approval. What you can't do is you can't decide this issue based on extraneous issues like flooding on Palmer Avenue. That is an off-site condition that the township committee took into account when they zoned this property AHMF. Our only requirement is that we keep all of our stormwater on site. We don't make those conditions worse. It is not the applicant's requirement to solve off-site problems. There's been a great deal of talk about mounding during this hearing. In point of fact, New Jersey DEP issued a freshwater wetlands general permit on February 10th, 2020. That permit says that the project meets the requirements of the stormwater management rules. Those rules include the groundwater mounding issue. Therefore, DEP has determined that there is no groundwater mounding issue. In fact, Mr. Zugner testified that DEP never asked for a mounding study. The objectors presented Mr. Murphy as their expert witness. No questions were asked him about mounding in his direct testimony. One of the board members asked about mounding, and Mr. Murphy said it was possible that mounding might be an issue. Notwithstanding that, at the board's request, Mr. Zugner prepared a mounding study that showed no impact to the buildings in the adjacent condos. In fact, during the course of that study, we learned that the building that is on Palmer Square, that is closest to the infiltration basin, doesn't even have a basement. We had to find that out by looking at real estate listings. And Mr. Murphy was again called as a witness at the last hearing. He did not offer any opinions as to the mounding study. In fact, again, Mr. Malenik didn't ask him any questions about that. Mr. Murphy did raise some concerns about the rim of the basin and the drainage patterns in the northeast corner. Mr. Zugner answered those questions, and we have added stormwater management features over and above what is required in the two rain gardens, and also more recently, some perforated pipe in the parking lot. If the board has any questions about whether stormwater has been adequately addressed, we suggest that you seek the advice of Mr. Euro. And as a matter of fact, if the board feels that there's any doubt at all, and they want this looked at further, we would not be adverse to a condition that the issue be revisited with Mr. Euro afterwards, and any minor adjustments that might be needed could be implemented at that point. The board asked for a larger elevator cab. We supplied a cut sheet showing a larger cab. The board then asked for plans showing that the larger cab fit into the elevator shaft. Even though that is a construction code issue, and we take the position is outside the purview of this board, we submitted revised plans. Mr. Barr has now testified about the cab and how it fits. There have also been some board members that raised concern about traffic. Under the Dunkin' Donuts case, the township committee took traffic into consideration when they adopted the zoning for this property. In any event, Mr. Ferrander indicated in his report and his testimony that there would be no degradation of traffic level of service as a result of this project. In point of fact, this development produces minimal traffic. Mr. Ferrander testified that during the peak hour, on average, in each direction, there would be one car every 4 minutes. That's not a lot of traffic. That's not the kind of traffic that should give the board members any pause. Let me now go into what Mr. Malenik just mentioned in his summation. He raised a lot of concerns about the prior project. Well, this is a different project than the board heard a couple of years ago. We now have parking underneath the building, which we did not have. It's also a different zoning ordinance than was in effect at that time. Again, he talked about Palmer Avenue. That is an off-site condition. It is not the applicant's responsibility to solve off-site conditions like Palmer Avenue. The county has been working on that. The county has raised the road. Our obligation is to show that we are not making the stormwater any worse. Let's see. He talked in general about health and safety. It's fine to talk about health and safety, but it's got to be tied to the zoning ordinance or the site plan review ordinance. Under the Pizzo-Manton case, the board does not have the ability to say, well, I have this generalized concern. I don't like this. I would have done it differently. I would have written the ordinance any differently. It is the board's obligation to follow the site plan review ordinance and the zoning ordinance. In sum, I would submit to you that this applicant has bent over backwards to address all of the board's concerns. It has fully complied with the site plan review ordinance and the zoning ordinance, and that the applicable law requires approval. Additionally, approval will bring the township into compliance with its own housing plan. And so we ask for approval subject to reasonable conditions, and we're prepared to discuss those conditions. We thank you again for your time and attention, and we look forward to your vote approving the application.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. Per your suggestion, Mr. Euro, can you just give us your thoughts on the detention basin and the water retention?
Yes, Madam Chair. Throughout the course of this application, my office has reviewed the preliminary submission of the stormwater management calculations, as well as the subsequent revisions, both the grading and the calculations, and my office is determined that these are satisfactory. There was some testimony discussions at the last meeting about a slight impact to the adjoining property adjacent to Palmer Avenue, but it is my opinion that this can be eliminated with a little bit of grading along that property line. But my office is satisfied with the calculations and the grading that has been presented as part of the stormwater management system.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to be heard? Okay,
Madam Chairwoman,
go ahead, Prakash, and then Mr. Castings will go to you next.
for the record, when we talked about the groundwater mounding study last time, I mentioned the inconsistency in the analysis because the data, the parameter that was used was not mentioned, was not consistent with anything in the application, specifically the recharge rate. Was not the number that was stated in the application, it was some other number. And I asked Mr. Ziegler to follow up with us and show why that number was used. And I don't believe we got anything from Mr. Ziegler.
We asked him to follow up with the engineer, and the engineer just testified that he's satisfied with what the information he has.
Yes,
So,
but I
none
specifically,
of us are educated enough to know the numbers. So I'm going to depend on Mr. Euro and his expertise. This is why we pay him the big bucks and we're all volunteers. So
I'm just pointing out that Mr. Ziegler agreed to follow up on this.
and he did through Mr. Euro. Is that correct, Mr. Euro?
That is correct.
Thank you. Mr. Cassidy?
Yeah, I have one comment. It's really a condition of the approval. If a motion is made for approval, I'm the chair of the Environmental Commission, and a letter was sent that requested that Lot 18 have a conservation easement applied to it, just like Lot 17. So we request that as a condition of the approval. If I could address that, Madam Chairwoman.
Sure.
That particular comment of the Environmental Commission is directly addressed in the AHMF zone. The AHMF zone, and Ms. Beam can pipe in on this too. The ordinance adopted by the Township Committee specifically said that a conservation restriction would not be needed because one was already in place.
Okay. Ms. Beam?
Yes, that is correct. That is addressed within the ordinance for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Bill, that's okay with you, Bill? It's in the ordinance, so it's already in place. It's just not wouldn't be a condition.
If there's a conservation easement applied to Lot 18, such as is on Lot 17, then we're okay.
Okay,
Yes.
yes. I see there's a hand up from the audience. Unfortunately, we closed public comment. So I'm not ignoring you. I just procedurally, I can't take your question or your comment anymore. I'm sorry. Any other board members wish to make a comment? Seeing none, I need a motion to approve this application subject to all the conditions that were discussed over the 5 hearings. And the added condition of tonight, as suggested by Mrs. Zimmerman, to make sure that detention basin is well within the property line of the Barclay Square units and not on the Palmer Square property. Is that okay, Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes, I think what I said was that if any minor adjustments are needed
Yes.
to the drainage, either the basin or the northeast corner, that the applicant's engineer would work with Mr. Euro to resolve them to his satisfaction. That would be
Yes.
fine.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Brian. I need a second,
I'll second.
which, Bill, thank you. Roll call, please, Bonnie.
Mr. Ackerson,
Yes.
Mr. Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Castaning,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Vote.
Mr. King.
He's giving a
Yes.
thumbs up. He's a yes. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, he can't.
Ms. Plusas,
Yes.
Mr. Santana,
No.
No.
Mr. Emma,
Fortunately, this is an action mandated by the state of New Jersey. Our job is to ensure that the applicant has met all the applicable rules and regulations. It seems now the applicant has met those requirements. As much as I am personally against this development, not approving it would expose us to builder's remedy, which would then take all the control away from the township. Therefore, I vote yes.
Ms. Tomaso.
I'm also going to, I have to tell you that I know there's a lot of people on this call, and I just want you all to know, we are not the group that you should be mad at. If you're going to be upset with anyone, you need to be upset with the people who changed the zone to this. And I want to thank Mayor Bontempo for voting no against this whole debacle, because we denied this application in 2016. And it's disappointing. But again, we will open the township up to builder's remedy, and the applicant has met the requirements put forth by the zoning. And they met the requirements that were put forth, that were put together by the 2017 and the 2018 Township Committee. It's also disappointing that there seems to be some timeline of donations made, but whether that's nefarious or not, we don't know. But I will not put the township in any further jeopardy. And while I understand a lot of the residents would truly want this application to fail, and it's easy for me to vote no now, right? It's got enough votes, but I won't leave my group out to dry. These people are good people who work hard. I don't want any of you to be mad at them for doing their job. So my vote is yes. And so all those flyers you just got about me, oh, well. So thank you all very much for your, to my planning board. I think that this was a very difficult application. Nobody is comfortable voting yes on this. Nobody is comfortable because we know how we felt 5 years ago on March 8th, actually 4 years ago when we denied it. But again, our hands are tied. Mr. Milanick, oh, I screwed up. Thank you for your service here. Mr. Zimmerman, thank you for pointing out some very important issues for the rest of us. And truly, to my board, you guys did a yeoman's work. This is probably the longest application we've had in many, many years. And I want to thank everybody that participated. And to our professionals, thank you very much. I truly appreciate your guidance and your intelligence for us. So we will have a resolution of approval in a month, Marty, July 20th, do you think?
Yeah,
Or
we have 45 days. The goal is our only meeting, the one meeting July, Bonnie?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be the goal. I mean, if it's, I'll let the board know if we're running behind.
Okay, so we'll have a resolution and all the conditions that were previously discussed throughout the 5 hearings will be in that resolution, and that resolution will be available for people to read.
Well, it'll be circulated to the attorneys, obviously before the meeting, as well as the board members, not to the public, but.
No, once we approve it, the public will be able to see it.
That's correct. That's correct.
Right. Once we approve it, the public will be able to see it, and you'll be able to know exactly what was approved this evening, and you'll be able to follow up on it. So,
But, and as a courtesy, we give it to, we will send it to Mr. Melnick and obviously to Mr. Zimmerman, but which is what I do as a courtesy.
So also for everyone's edification, the July 20th meeting will be in person. The township is going to back to in-person meetings on next Tuesday. And so we will follow suit. Our next meeting on July 20th will be in person. So
Thank God.
this. Tom, you finally got your mute off. Just in time to say thank God. We'll be meeting in person. That's all we have on the agenda this evening, except unless we have anything from the planner.
No, ma'am.
Serena, I just have that one generator location change.
From you or from Jen?
Well,
Not from me.
Jen wasn't at this meeting, but it's a pretty standard thing. Somebody in the Regency wanted to change the location of their generator. So we met. It was determined not to have any negative impact in any way. So it was administratively approved. We just need the board to put their okay on it. It was at 15 Lennox Court.
So you need a motion to approve something you did administratively? Who did, Kate Keller did the?
Kate, Ben Matlack, the zoning officer, the construction official. It's a whole team of people that review everything connected with the site.
Okay, maybe in the future, could we get an email or some kind of something? I know you emailed me about it. I thought Jen was the engineer on it and she would have spoken about it tonight. That's why I didn't ask further questions. You're asking the board to approve something they don't know anything about, and they have no paperwork and no engineer to testify to it. Does it have to be administratively approved this evening or?
Well, I guess it's going to put the applicant, in a pretty bad place because now they have to wait for another month before they can get going with their generator plans. The homeowners association approved the location. There were no major issues. We don't approve everything. This one was sort of like a no-brainer. The deck was built in a place where the generator was going to go. And unfortunately, they approved these locations without thinking that people were going to put decks off the back of their house.
Okay, it seems we have a lot of issues with this developer and this, we've moved many generators and decks.
Yeah, this is the seventh one we've talked about. Yep.
So, the rest we've also approved administratively, but we've gotten some information beforehand. Does anyone have is everybody okay with approving it, or would you rather have paperwork, or just, we'll keep the homeowner on hold for another month because we don't meet again until July 20th is our next meeting. Does anybody have objection to allowing Bonnie to do the administrative approval?
Marty, you have any comments for us on this?
We generally do it. We just approve them pretty standard, but sometimes there is a need from the board just to understand what's happening. But I would think, given the fact we're not going to meet for another month, I would probably take that into consideration just to get it done. But it's obviously as a board member, we want to see these, you would want to see these, just an explanation from the engineer or the planner that approved it.
Marty, do you see this applicant?
Did I what?
Have you seen the applicant?
No, I'm not part of that administrative meeting.
Okay.
So I hate to put the homeowner because we didn't do something right. I hate to put her or them, and it is the seventh one. We know that this builder constantly has to move the generator because he's got it approved in a place that doesn't work for the homeowner. So,
right. And the board, the committee looks at things like how far the exhaust, it has to be away from windows and doors and other people's windows and everything. Jen has been to a number of these hearings and she knows the kinds of issues that we look at. So I don't know if there's a way that we could maybe conditionally accept it and I could send something out to everybody tomorrow. Would that work?
You could.
This way, at least there's a comfort level that you've seen what it is, and then you could just let me know if you're comfortable with it. If you're not, then we'll have to come back.
My opinion is, why are we second guessing a set of professionals here?
No, I'm not second guessing. We usually get information about it
I
beforehand.
understand. I
Yeah, so-
understand. And
You
usually
know, so
we,
I don't have a problem. I just don't want anybody I personally don't have a problem. I just don't want anybody on the board to feel that because they didn't get the information, they're making a decision blind, so to speak. You know, usually the engineer is here or the planner is here and they explain what happened. They explain where it goes and then we say, okay. I mean, we never, ever not say okay, but it's usually a little bit of an explanation. So
I'll make a motion to conditionally approve it.
thank you, Brian.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, I'll get something out tomorrow.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. I don't think there's anything else on the agenda unless the attorney has something for us.
Do not.
Bob Euro?
I do not.
Oh, thank you. All righty. So our next meeting, as you heard me say, is going to be July 20th. It'll be in person. So I don't have to zoom the courtroom behind me anymore. Lose my hand when I point backwards. And I just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Thank you, Prakash. Second, Brian. Thank you so much, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
I'll see you.
Take care, everyone.
See you, everyone.
Bye.